Talking about erectile dysfunction isn't easy. Most of us brush it off or blame ourselves, saying things like, I lost my mojo, or people make excuses. Honey, I had a long day at work. Sorry, I'm just not feeling it. Guys, with Roman, it's easy to talk about it. With a real healthcare professional who can prescribe real medication, it's simple, it's safe, it's totally discreet. With Roman, you get a free online evaluation and ongoing care for ED, all from the comfort and privacy of your home. A healthcare professional will work with you to find the best treatment plan. If medication is appropriate, Roman will ship it to you with free 2-day shipping. The whole process is straightforward, simple, and discreet. Getting started is easy. Just go to getroman.com/Chael and complete the online visit. Go to getroman.com/Chael today. If approved, you'll get $15 off your first order of ED treatment. Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather just doesn't work. Why? Why? If you're studying those and you even look backwards to the one that worked really well, Ben Askren versus Jake Paul, why did that work? And why does Logan and Floyd not? And is there any way to get it too? Right? I mean, that's really what a promoter's job is. Anybody can sell a Ferrari. A promoter can bring two guys in, whoever they are, tell a story and make it interesting, right? Vince McMahon is very famous for the quote, I could sell out Madison Square Garden to have a wrestler take on a mop if I promoted it correctly. So a promoter could get in here and get involved, but what would that promoter need to do? And don't forget, there's not very many promoters out there. A promoter is a storyteller. There's not even very many people that are called promoters right now that could even tell you what I just said, which is simply that their job is to tell a story. That's how few promoters there are. Even the guy sitting in the chair that says promoter on it isn't a promoter and wouldn't even know to be true what I just stated. So if you were an actual promoter, of which Triller doesn't have one, if you were an actual promoter, of which Golden Boy doesn't have one, if you were, I mean, you could go right through the list where there's just not promoters out there, but there are promotions and there's a meaningful difference. If you had a skilled promoter, is there anything that he could do to change the fact that Paul versus Mayweather just doesn't work? And the first thing we're going to have to do is identify what's the miss. What is the miss? Is it just because Floyd is so decorated in success and Paul is not that it's silly? Because we see silly things all the time. We steer right into it. We call it a sideshow. We call it a freak show, but we buy it and we sit and we view it anyway. Why does that fight not work? There's a couple of things that were done in the build up to Floyd versus Conor. And as close and competitive and as great as that fight was in hindsight, we had none of those advantages going into it. You have an Irish kid who's never boxed against a 6th division world champion who's never been beaten at boxing. This was an impossible task. So one of the ways that the story was told was of how hardworking and dedicated Conor was, while the next thing you see is Floyd going through McDonald's and getting a Big Mac, not training at all, going out to the clubs. This was the attempt. Both guys were followed for equal amount of time. Both guys went to have food, entertain themselves, and work out in the gym the exact same amount of time, but there was a reason that in the editing room they decided to show Conor's and not show Floyd's. Because that was a way to bring your insurmountable gap of a guy who has never lost at it against a guy who's never even tried it and start to bring that gap to be a little bit more believable. So I'm offering you a suggestion. Is that what needs to be done in the world of promoting? Do they need to find a way to make it look as though Floyd is going to go out there with one hand tied behind his back? Is there a way to do that? Is there a way to even do the other side and convince the world that Paul is in the gym training with anybody meaningful and or tactful enough to have him compete with Floyd? I think one built-in mechanism right now is just the size difference, and they should be screaming that to the world. They should be screaming about the size difference to the world because Floyd has been very hesitant to fight many guys unless they weigh to the 10th a certain weight. That matters to Floyd. I don't know what the big deal is. I have no idea. You can either hit this guy more times than he can hit you, but the boxers don't think that way. They want to know how big the ring is. They want to know if there is horsehair put in the gloves. They want to agree on what hotels we're going to stay at, what press conference times are. The main event and the main fighters will even put into their contract they will not leave the locker room until X time. That was in every single Mike Tyson contract. Doesn't matter that he's a main event in 5 fights or before him. Mike does not leave the locker room before 9:56 p.m. by example. Man, they would put these things in there, and that mattered. That mattered to Mike's team. You want to know when they needed to arrive, when they needed to wrap the hands, when they needed to warm up, when they needed to get a drink of water, and when they needed to put their game face on, and they didn't want to be surprised on fight night. None of the things that I just mentioned would any MMA fighter know anything about. That would never be discussed. That would never be built in. It would be absolutely no part of the event. But it is for boxing. So I think that part of the story does need to be told, that they're not going to have the gloves that Floyd prepares. And it's not going to be in the 17 by 17 ring like the Mayweathers are used to. It's going to be in an 18 by 18 ring, but then you need to take the time to explain why that matters. No reasonable person is going to know why or that does matter. But in crazy land that Floyd's been living, right, the world of boxing, second generation crazy land, second generation boxer, come out and tell the story. At some point, it has to be told, what is the difference in the rounds? We're changing the rounds. We're doing 8-2s. Why? And why does that matter? Why is that relevant? And why does that help the chances of Logan, right? I mean, it's one of these things. We're up against it. That fight just simply doesn't work. I think Logan, because I think you get a 2-for-1. I think the Paul brothers get a 2-for-1. I think everything good Logan does, Jake gets credit. Everything good Jake does, Logan gets credit. So you can start to build. You can start to gain momentum at twice the speed. I've seen other sports where it's a twin. It's a twin situation. And if the twin sisters go into the same sport, they could get somewhere twice as quickly. They just got credit. It was just one of those things. People recognized them. People saw them. They could identify. It was one of those things. I think Logan can go sell out arenas just like brother Jake. He can't do it against Floyd. I don't know why. I'm close. I've identified it, which is more than most. I'm curious about it, which is more than most. I'm speaking about it, which is more than most. I'm still not there. I don't know why that fight doesn't work. There's simply nothing interesting about it, and it's a little confusing why they're so logjammed, because Floyd, much like Paul, Floyd can go sell out an arena. He just can't do it with Logan. So if they're dead set and stubborn that they are going to go do this together, somebody's going to have to step in between to write the check, and that somebody's going to have to believe ahead of time that they can tell a story compelling enough to back whatever contract they signed, to sign whatever check they promised to. That somebody needs to be a promoter, and that somebody's going to need a plan, because this is a very, very hard fight. They've already lost it once from lack of interest. As soon as that happened, historically speaking, you would pack up and move on. You would never come back to something that suffered that kind of embarrassment. Two big, well-known guys who can't, I mean, do you see the problem? You never come back to it, but they have. They want this to work. They want it to work so badly. Why? And the only difference now where they're trying to put this fight back together is that Jake got a win. I don't know that Jake showing us how good of a boxer he turned out to be makes you think that Logan can then beat Floyd. And if you don't have that belief, even on some level, there's a lot of things you can do, but this business together just isn't one of them. But they're stuck on it. Logan could go sell out an arena. Floyd could come back, demand a big paycheck. They're both choosing to sit with their oars out of the water until they can find a way to do it together. And I get asked these questions a lot. Chael, what would you do? How would you put this one together? I got to tell you, that fight doesn't work. It just does. I don't know why.